Hello, and welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. I'm Dr. Christine Baker, and I'll be your host. I am so happy to be back with you guys. I know that we have had a pretty long series recently. It was 9 weeks where we really dug into the embodiment of the Enneagram, and every single number got its own episode, and it was so fun. We had the most incredible guest. And so if you missed those episodes, definitely run back and check out your number and your partner's number and your mom's number and all the things. But I am really excited to be back with you and just kind of getting back to our normal rhythm. So if you are new to this podcast, how I typically do things is I take a symptom. We kind of talk about the nervous system education. We kind of nerd out for a minute about that symptom. And then I give you a specific practice to do if you are someone who struggles with that symptom. And I try to do all of this in 15 minutes or less. My goal being that you'll be able to take that skill and create a rhythm in your everyday so that your nervous system can really be consistently nourished in the areas that it's struggling. So that is kind of what we're getting back to. Now, with that being said, today is going to be a little bit different because of a huge kind of life-changing experience that I personally just had and how much nervous system work was on the forefront of my mind the whole time. And so I'd love to just talk you guys through all of that and some of the big learnings and the big takeaways I've had in the weeks following. So for those of you that don't know this, back at the end of February, beginning of March, my husband and I went on a 10-day trip to Israel. We were going, it was like a spiritual trip. We were going to see all of the sights of Jesus with other pastors and their wives. And it has been a trip that we have been actually waiting to go on for I don't even know, 5+ years. It had been canceled multiple times because of COVID and unrest in Israel. And so we were finally going. We were so excited. And it was incredible. The first, 5 days of the trip, we got to do a worship service on the Sea of Galilee. I got to walk, yes, barefoot. I got to walk barefoot in the place where Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount. And so for me as a Christian, this was like a life-changing experience. So incredible. And we've been on the trip for 5 days. Day 5, we were actually traveling into Jerusalem, and the rest of our trip was going to be happening in Jerusalem. And day 5 was the day right before the U.S. and Israel started the conflict with Iran. So day 6, we wake up, we are getting ready to go to the Dead Sea that day and the Mount of Olives, like so many cool things. And then the sirens go off. None of us obviously know what that means. We all kind of like stand up in the lobby and look at each other like what's happening. And our tour guide and the hotel staff kind of usher us down to the hotel's bomb shelter. And so if you've never been to Israel, because of all of the unrest that can happen there, every house has a bomb shelter, every business has a bomb shelter. This is just kind of unfortunately and sadly, it breaks my heart, a way of life. And so we went down 4-ish flights of stairs into the bomb shelter for the first time. And over the next 30-ish hours, we went 13 more times. We were woken up out of sleep to sirens multiple times. I mean, it was very scary. During that process, the airspace obviously closed in Tel Aviv, and so we had to find a way home. Our tour guide actually ended up taking us out through Egypt, and his name is actually Moses, which is kind of crazy, but it was over the course of 3 days that we traveled from Jerusalem all the way back home. So we ended up driving over the Egyptian border. We drove to a very small airport in Egypt, went from there to Cairo, from Cairo to Istanbul, and then Istanbul home. So it was a long, exhausting, and pretty scary process, right? Now, I'm home now. I'm safe. And I want to take this episode to just tell you what I experienced in my body and my nervous system during that time, because my hope is that this episode can almost act like a somatic first aid. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're going through it knowing, oh, wow, this is traumatic, this is going to leave a lasting impact on my life, then you'll have some skills in your tool belt to pull out. Okay. Because I did, and I am so incredibly grateful for every single one of them. And so I want to take today to share those with you. So for those of you that don't know me yet, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I am a licensed professional counselor and a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is just a fancy way to say that I believe deeply that real healing comes through addressing the stuck places in the body, specifically the nervous system. And that belief is why this whole podcast exists. My hope is that every episode gives you a practical tool that you can use in everyday life, something small enough that can be built into rhythms in your life so that nervous system care can become as natural and ordinary as brushing your teeth every day. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, I'd love to invite you to hit that follow button on whatever website or podcast streaming app you are listening to this on. Every click really does help other people find this material, and I so appreciate it. Okay, let's get into it. So I want to start with a story, one that I actually thought about consistently over the course of that Saturday to Tuesday when we got home. And that is one of the stories that Dr. Peter Levine tells in his book, In an Unspoken Voice. And I'll make sure to include a link to that book if you haven't read it. So good. So Peter Levine is the founder of Somatic Experiencing, which is the body-based trauma modality that I trained in. And he has someone that has shaped so much of what I do as a clinician. And he spent decades studying how animals and humans move through traumatic experiences. And more importantly, why they get stuck in them. And so he had all of this information that he had gathered from his research. And then one day, after all that research, he was crossing the street and he was hit by a car. And what makes that story remarkable is that in the moments after impact, as he lay on the ground, disoriented by the pain, he didn't just survive that experience. He actually used everything that he knew to move through that experience in real time. One of the examples that he gave was he asked a woman who had stopped to stay close to him, not to do anything, just to be there. And he tracked the sensations moving through his body. He allowed the trembling and the shaking that his body naturally wanted to do to happen. He oriented to his surroundings, noticing what was around him, noticing what was solid, what was safe. He stayed with himself through the wave of the trauma. And so what he shares in his book is that because he was so intentionally in the moment responding to this crisis, he did not go on to develop PTSD from this accident because he was processing it as it was happening. And I thought about that story so many times in Israel because I knew in my bones, in my core, in my gut, that how I responded in these moments, how I cared for my nervous system running up and down those stairs was going to matter for how I came home. So that's what I want this episode to be about. I want to share with you what I actually did. These are not techniques I invented in a moment of panic. These are things that I have been practicing. I've been taught by the SC community, by my somatic experiencing practitioner therapist, and now got the opportunity to live out in that crisis moment. And today, I just want to offer them to you as, like I said, a kind of somatic first aid if you, God forbid, have any of these scary moments in your life in the future. Okay, so first up is to allow your body to complete the movement it is already doing or that your body wants to do. You know, when we were running up and down those stairs to the bomb shelter in the hotel, I was so aware my body is engaging its flight response right now. In this moment, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I am moving towards safety. And as I had those thoughts, I really paid attention to my feet hitting the ground with each step. I oriented to each floor number as we went down the floors. Left foot, right foot. Here's the ground. Here's the ground. And so I was not only completing the flight response because that's what your body's going to do. It's going to take care of you. But I was embodying that flight response being completed. Dr. Levine's work teaches us that trauma happens not from the event itself, but from the body's survival energy getting mobilized and then not completing. And so when we consciously track and complete that movement, even just by acknowledging it, the sensation of it, we help the nervous system do what it was designed to do. And so if you are ever in a moment where you are physically moving, evacuating, running, walking fast, let yourself feel it. Let your feet land, let your legs carry you. Tell your body, this is working. I am moving towards safety. Number 2, I want you to really hunt for tiny signs of safety. right? So, like, become a resource detective, as I've said before on the podcast. So, as your body is moving, even before you've arrived anywhere, you can start doing this one. And this comes again straight from somatic experiencing. Peter Levine calls it orienting. This is actually what animals do instinctively the moment a threat begins to pass. They lift their heads up and look around, kind of scan the environment. They're asking, hey, what's here? Am I safe? Is the threat gone? And when your nervous system is flooded with threat, one of the most powerful things that you can do is deliberately look for small signs that right now in this moment, I'm okay. Not that everything's fine, not that I'm ignoring the hard that is there, not pretending the danger isn't real, just that in this moment, there is something small that is not threatening. Maybe that's like a plant in the room. Maybe it's even something as simple as hearing the person breathe next to you, or maybe the texture of the table that you're sitting at. I remember we would always go to this one room in the bomb shelter, our team would, and right outside that room, they would always have, this is so bizarre, y'all. They would always have like coffee and juice and water kind of set up in this little table for people to have while they were down there. Because every time the alarm goes off, you have to wait 10 minutes before you can go back upstairs. And so I remember like that was something that I oriented to, was like seeing people drinking coffee. I was like, okay, people are drinking coffee. That is, I don't know why that like struck me. It just kind of felt like a little bit of normalcy. And so it was like, okay, it's okay. People are drinking coffee. I remember one time, even one guy from our team brought a plate of French fries down to the bomb shelter and was passing them out. Obviously that feels very like normal, like, and that's something to orient to. So it doesn't have to mean you have to wait until there is absolute safety around you to be able to orient. You are literally just looking for one thing that looks kind of nice, or one thing that feels a little bit safe, right? Find it, rest your eyes on it, and then notice what happens in your body as you do. Even a tiny bit of settling, even like that little bit of drop in the shoulders or a tiny little exhale, that's your body taking in that message of safety. And that really helps resource your nervous system to be able to do the hard work that it is doing to protect you in the midst of the crisis. So another thing that I did, number 3, was I really paid attention to the things that were supporting me. So for instance, like when we arrived in the bomb shelter, there were all these chairs everywhere. And so I would always sit. And when I sat, I would start by feeling my feet on the floor and really noticing, this concrete floor is stable. It is holding me. It is safe. Noticing the chair underneath me, like really feeling my seat, my pelvis in the chair, letting it kind of try to rest into the chair just a little bit. Because as silly as this may seem, giving yourself that message that I am physically supported right now is another one of those little small signs of safety, like what we just talked about. This isn't a cognitive practice of, okay, let me make, a T-chart of what's safe and what's not safe right now. It bypasses all of that. It goes right to the body and speaks to that like very, old part of your brain and the brainstem that just wants to know, am I supported? Am I on solid ground? And you can give your body that message when you just allow yourself to rest in even just a centimeter into the things that are supporting you. Number 4, as you can, connect with people. Grounding can settle your own system, noticing the ground, noticing the chair, orienting to what's around you. But connecting to other humans with other nervous systems reminds your nervous system that you're not alone. And that is profound. So every time I made eye contact with someone or smiled at someone or even like heard someone laugh, even if that laugh was a little bit like dark and, oh my gosh, where are we? What's happening? Can you believe this kind of laugh? I still felt something inside. And that's that like ventral vagal activation. Dr. Stephen Porges talks a lot about this. It's our social engagement system. And we are wired, literally neurologically wired to relate through connection to other safe humans. And so if you find yourself in a scary moment, find your people or find a person that looks semi-safe and talk to them and make eye contact with them. And don't just do it on autopilot because Christine told me to and I'm going to check it off the list. Actually track what happens in your body as you do. Notice those shoulders relax a little. Maybe notice if your breath comes a little easier. Even the tiniest bit of relief matters. This is your nervous system taking stock of its resources, and that is important. And then finally, this was one that kind of surprised me a little bit. And that was singing. So as I mentioned earlier, this was a group of pastors that was on this trip, pastors and wives. So, singing is a huge part of Christian tradition and history. And so as we were down there, we had a guy on the trip who was leading worship for our team, and he had his guitar and he brought it down every single time, sweet buddy, and we would sing. And I love this one. It was so powerful to do it in community the way we did it, but it's also one that you can always do, even when everything else feels out of reach, even if you're alone, even if it's dark, even quietly enough that no one else really hears you. Humming and singing actually activates that vagus nerve directly, the same nerve that governs your body's calm, connection, social engagement system that I just mentioned before. Dr. Porges's research shows that the muscles of the face, the throat, the middle ear, they're all connected to that vagal pathway, which is why vocalizing, singing, humming, even quietly, even just to yourself, creates this sense of settling. And so obviously we sang as a group down there, but I also found myself just like humming whenever I would start to get really stressed. I knew about this humming thing. And so I would just hum, and I would really notice that vibration inside when I did. And that was my nervous system accessing a tool that I had learned, just another resource. Like I said, all of these things that I'm talking about, they do not make the crisis go away, obviously. They just resource your nervous system enough to be able to keep functioning at the best possible capacity that it can in the midst of the crisis. We are just giving a little bit more resource to be able to get through the hard time. So I genuinely hope that you never have to use these skills. I hope you're never in a bomb shelter. I hope you're never evacuating somewhere. I hope you never are in a car accident. I hope that this episode doesn't come across as future tripping or kind of this doomsday mentality. And I also know the rates of trauma in the world. And so I know that we all have hard days ahead. And so whether it's a crisis or whether it's a really hard medical appointment or a moment of grief or a conflict in your life that's escalating, anytime that your body is starting to move into that high activation state, I want you to have tools that you can use to help find that one little thread back to safety. These are simple, they work, I've seen them work, and the more you practice them when things are not scary, the more available they're going to be to you when they are. So as we close out, I don't want y'all to think that just because I did these things, I'm unimpacted by the Israel trip. Of course, that's not true. I'm still integrating this experience. I literally just got off a call with my therapist. I've seen her 3 times since I've been home. But I will say I came home more convinced than ever that this work matters, that the things that we teach ourselves about our nervous systems become a kind of internal compass that we can carry into even the hardest places. And I know that because I had embodied this work over the last handful of years, I was able to access those tools in the bomb shelter. And so as you listen to this, if you're thinking, man, I really want to be able to have these tools for myself too, I'd love to invite you to check out the Somatic Wellness Collective. This is an online psychoeducational community that I run where I focus on giving students language for what's happening, which that alone reduces feelings of panic and overwhelm and distress. I've seen people after doing this work be able to return to baseline sooner after being activated or experiencing some kind of crisis. I wrote this in an email this past week. I said, you don't learn to swim in a storm. You practice in a pool so that your body knows what to do when it gets out in the ocean and the waves are intense. And that is truly what I've learned from this whole experience in Israel, is that all of this practice that I've been doing in the pool with my therapist, in SWC, in my SE training, all of that was what made my nervous system more resourced to be able to handle what happened in Israel. And I want that for you too. And so there are links in the show notes if you want to learn more. And of course, reach out if you have any questions. So we are going to be back into our kind of regular rhythm starting next week. Really am just so grateful to be here with all of you. I love this community. I love hearing from y'all in the comments, how the videos are impacting you. So definitely keep that up. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. And until then, just remember, Your body has innate wisdom. All you have to do is learn how to listen to it, and that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next week.